is the Unlearning Podcast, a show where we will begin to disrupt, dissolve, deprogram, and dismantle what we think limits us in order to reinvent, rebirth, and revolutionize the world in our most authentic selves. My name is Christina, and I'm your host. Welcome to the Unlearning Podcast. Today, our topic is the visible man, and we have an amazing guest and colleague of mine, Eric Golden. So, Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Eric is a community leader, youth activist, speaker, facilitator, entrepreneur, and technology creative based out of Denver, Colorado. He's the owner of the Young Professionals Network, L.L.C, a group that works with community youth to help them redefine their identities and goals to achieve success on their terms. He formerly worked as manager of community partnerships with Denver Public School, a school district that served over 90,000 students. He's a dedicated father and passionate being who sees the power in investing in our youth. Again, let's welcome Eric to our show.
I appreciate that, Christina. That was too kind.
You know you the bomb. I just want to tell the list. Well, I'm going to let you tell a little bit about yourself. However you want to go with it, just roll with it.
Oh, that's interesting. I am, like you said, I'm a father. I think that's one of my most important things that I do is I have three daughters, 14, 10, and 8, who mean everything to me. I have a partner. We've been together for 10 years. She means everything to me. And so those people drive my life. Other than that, I just want to be a student all the time. I want to be growing and learning as much as I can, being a good human, right? I just want to find value in all of the things on this planet, whether it be human or not, right? Like I love to just the connection we all have with all of the beings that are on this planet, and I just really want to lean into that as much as I can in every place I am, and that makes me feel good.
Nice. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, and I shared this story with you, we both we were at a leadership retreat, the DPS leader retreat. Mm-hmm. And I was at I think since I've been here in Denver, like at one of the lowest points where I was starting to pick up the identities or the labels that other people were giving me. And that's kind of been the theme that I've talked to other people about this week, all these labels that we put on each other and then we put on ourselves. And I was at the lowest of the low. You saw it. Every time we had to do something, I'm breaking down, crying, snot nose city, and you were just there like you were on fire. Like something had changed from, we've known each other for 4 years and we've seen our ups and downs, and you were just on so much fire. In my mind, I was like, what is he on? And how can I get some of that? It's like something had been removed and you were just free. And everybody was like gravitating towards you because you felt whatever you were feeling, that freedom, just like it just showed up. It just showed up and it resonated with everybody. And I took a long, hard look at you that week to say, well, first I went to like, what is he doing? I got to find that out. But then as you talked more and more, it wasn't anything you were doing. It was more about who you were becoming. And then it made me realize like, whatever you were doing started with letting go. And that's what I got to figure out. Like Eric can't give me the secret sauce. It's something I got to do. And it was just it was powerful, but it was beautiful to see how you would just change. It was like you just didn't care. But what came out the way you spoke your truth, you owned who you were, you owned your space, and just people just responded. And it wasn't so much about the people, but it was just you had just truly changed, and it was just beautiful to see. And I had never seen that before. The transformation in action. So I said one day, looking at you, I was like, one day I'm going to ask him. Like, how did he go through all of what he went through to get to that point? Because I wish I could have recorded it and showed it to people what transformation evolution looked like. Because it shocked me, and it was in awe. It was beautiful to watch. I just wanted you to know it was beautiful to watch.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So tell us how. Well, let me go back a little bit. If you wanted one thing you wanted people to know about you, what would that be, based on what I just said?
Um, I think the thing that the messages I like to have is that, especially working with like youth the way we do, is that people are redeemable.
Mm,
People are redeemable. We Until we find out who we are, we live in life that we don't really. Sometimes we don't even want, and we do things that we don't want to do. And to give a person an opportunity to find themselves and become their true potential, I think is something that we don't do often enough.
mm-hmm.
Um, and for me, I was given that opportunity. Like when I was younger, I got in trouble and I got charged with attempted murder. I was looking at 16 to 32 years in prison.
Wow.
And if I didn't get a second opportunity, I wouldn't be here talking to you now, right?
Wow.
I would still be in prison. So it just, I think my message that I try to carry with me through my work is children are redeemable. People are redeemable.
Mm, mm. And so that's very interesting. I did not know that about, part of your story.
Hmm.
You talked, and we had talked a little bit before about like identities. And so, like, what got you to that point? Almost, and you go as deep as you want to,
Hmm.
you feel comfortable. Like, I'm not
Hmm.
trying to Kanye nobody.
Yeah, you good.
So I'm putting that term. I didn't told that term to everybody. Take it with, I'm not Kanye and nobody.
Yep,
So,
yep.
or,
I feel you.
what got you, to that point? And then I guess like well, let's go back to identity, because you said,
Hmm.
you had a lot of identities that were just like being thrown upon you. And some
Yeah.
of them are obvious.
Hmm.
Some of them, but I think all of them are important because people need to hear it, because there's somebody
Hmm.
there that's not aware
Hmm.
how that identity really does impact
Yeah.
an individual human being. So,
Yep. Yeah, I think identities are an, an interesting thing because most of our identities, I feel like personally, this is me. I feel like we take them from the world. Like we
mm-hmm.
don't, we very rarely choose an identity. And then if we say I choose this identity, then we choose it the way the world sees it.
Mm,
So I think like growing up, I'm biracial, but I grew up with my black family all the time. So that's the identity that I took because
yeah,
I can't. I mean, I could, but people would look at me crazy if I said I was white. And I don't. It's just not the thing. But I think that like so that was something I just lived into.
yeah,
And then it's like, what does being black mean? And then because of where I live, that meant something too. And
yeah.
so then I just lived into that, right? And so I found myself um, sitting in jail. Like I need to do something different. And the
Mm,
only way I'm going to be able to do something different is I become somebody different. If I like just become who I want to be. And I was really young back then. I was like 18. And so I
wow.
didn't have the concept of what that would be, but I knew that's what I needed to do. The one thing one thing that was clear to me was that I needed to follow my own path.
Mm,
And so it really did set me on this because of the situation that landed me in jail. It was very much because I was listening to other people. I was doing what other people wanted. I was very much a follower and
yeah.
following things and listening to other people, not making my choices for the ones that I would like, not making choices that I wanted to make.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got out of jail, I was like, that's not going to happen anymore. And so I now it started a path where I stopped listening to what people told me I was and what I should be and what I should do. It just
Yeah,
like none of that mattered to me anymore. I was going to do the things that I felt was necessary for me. I
yeah.
was going to listen to me all the time, and that's what I've just done. And so I have a really strong inner voice that I always like to tell people like peer pressure is not a thing for me.
Mm,
Like
yeah,
like there's nobody in this world who can tell me to do something that I don't want to do.
yeah.
It just won't happen. And that comes from this idea that like I live through choice. I don't.
Mm,
There's no identity that drives me to do something because I'm this identity. It just doesn't work like that for me.
wow.
I do things because I choose them. I don't. The identity around it, surrounding it, doesn't matter to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's a free place to like. Now, what you were saying about the freedom, that's what makes me feel free. Is I get to show up and be myself and be authentic, and I don't give a damn. You either like me or you don't. That's not my problem. That's actually on you. It's
Right.
not my problem. You examine why you don't like me because there's something there, but I'm gonna be me. Um, and that works for me so well.
How did you? This is almost like you said, like the environments are putting these labels on you. So even, I've talked to other people who, they've redeemed their path, right? And so, but they wound up going and following groups that basically were the same. Like they're still telling you who you are within their environment, but it clashes with another environment and the other label in some ways, right? So for one, there was one person I interviewed who wound up with people's because they felt that they were, these people accepted them when no one else would. And then based on that label and that identity of who they thought they had to be, it then later clashed with other groups who had a similar intention, but a similar way of it being presented. Let me say it that way, which resulted in another series of events that, could have led him 6 consecutive life sentences, which is like, first of all, that blows my mind. Nobody lived that long. Like, why even do that to somebody? That's cruel. To me, it's cruel. Yep. Did you get a sense of that in the time, like when these other groups? So let me say it this way: like for that individual, it was like, were you calling to the streets, or were the streets calling you? So were you calling to that thing, or were those people or that environment calling to you, and why?
Yeah, I think it feels, for me, it was like a mutual thing. I just grew up, like my upbringing was I moved around a lot. Like I lived with my mom for a little bit, then I moved in with my granny, then I moved in with my other grandma, then I moved back in with my mom, then I moved in with my dad. So I was always moving. I was always trying to find like my place in the world, where do I belong, who wants me. And at 14 and 15, I was struggling to find that. And so I think I was unconsciously seeking things out. My big brother was like heavy into it, and so me and his relationship really got close, and so I was hanging out with him.
Yeah.
And as I went, so I was looking for that in a bit. And when I got to the groups, they also were, so it was like coming from both ways. They were seeking me out and I was seeking them out. And so it was just like, it just happens that way, right? Like, so, and so here there I was in that situation doing those things. I think so I think it came from both ways. It really did come from both ways.
Yeah. I find that, growing up, whenever I thought about quitting or letting something go, right? Because I've not been that deep. There was always someone there, like a word of encouragement, depending where you were or who tried to speak to the identity they saw and not not what you were living, right? It was speaking to that potential. And it became a choice of whether or not you listened, whether or not, you had to go down, another path. So was there anyone in your life at that time or just during your life when you were thinking about all these identities, that voice that of encouragement to speak to the potential, Eric?
Yes. There was not one person, there's probably a lot, but there's one person who always sticks out. So when this was all going on, I was also playing football. And I had a coach who was like our defensive coordinator. And it was the end of the football season. And it had to be like the end of my freshman or sophomore year. I think it was sophomore year. And he quite frankly was seeing me going down this path really heavily. And he was going to move schools. He was going to a new school in the Denver area where he was going to teach at this new school. And he was going to be a head coach. And so he was like, Eric, like, I want you to come live with me. He was like, I want you to move out.
Wait, live with
in
you?
my house. Yeah, he wanted me to live with him. He was like, I want you to come live with me and my family. He was like, I want to get you out of what's going on. Like, you've got too much potential, and I can see you going down the wrong path. I want to help you. And I was like taken aback. I was like, quite frankly, no. At that time in my life, there was nobody doing that type of stuff. Like nobody was saying that to me.
Yeah.
So it was really a shock. And then we talked about it for a little while, and I turned it down. I said no. And I didn't talk to him like ever again, really. But I remember feeling in that moment like somebody cared a little bit, right? That like at least somebody cares what was happening. And it wasn't, man, it couldn't have been like maybe like 6, 7 months later that I got in trouble and,
Wow.
and actually went to jail. And so it was really, I don't know, it was one of those moments where I look back like, damn, I missed that opportunity, like, and I'll
Mhm.
never get it back.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that was somebody who was really like in my corner and wanted to help me, but I didn't take it. But I just think about that person a lot.
Wow. What would you say to him if you met him today?
So I just say thank you.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I didn't realize at the moment how important that was to me.
Yeah.
But now I'm 35 and I think about it all the time, like how impactful his caring was, just
Yeah.
the caring of it all.
And I find too that when we don't know who we are, we we don't know how to receive.
Mm,
And so there've been many times in my life, especially these past 12 years, like I told someone, like I've been living my life like 12 years a slave, like for real. Like just all the things that were surfacing and being imprisoned in your own mind. Um and so like to you, when you have people who are coming and trying to show you kindness and love, you don't know how to receive that because
mhm,
everybody has told you and you've begun to believe that hype that you're nothing and you're not worthy of it. And in doing so, like I ran from a lot of folks. That's why I kept running, like 12 years of running, pulling that Harriet Tubman, trying to get free and
mm,
can't get anywhere. Cause don't know where freedom is, can't find a North Star, like just lost.
mhm.
And then it wasn't until like till recently where it's like I have to be okay with receive the care, receive it because we don't our people get it's constantly projected and we project it on each other that we're not worthy of
Mhm.
that we don't give each like to the whole thing in the beginning about opening the door. That is it can be controlled, but it can also be an act of care.
Yep.
So either way it goes, we have to receive it, not trying to apologize for it, not trying to devalue ourselves in it.
Yep. I agree
um,
100%.
and so how does that, because when I first met you, you are all about like kids, like and what you said, like you are all about redeeming, kids and adults. And so you had this fire that was not like a teacher, like, oh, I teach, I'm in a classroom. It was a fire that was totally different because most people who aren't in the classroom, it's almost like they feel bad. Like that's the only way that you can impact kids. And
Hmm.
so how has the lessons that you've learned like come in, and connected to the work that you're doing with youth?
Yeah, I think um, so. A big part of my work is social emotional. We do a
Mm-hmm.
lot of emotional intelligence, and I think for me, the biggest thing that has changed in my life is me mentally. Like my emotional intelligence, as it grows, I grow. As it becomes better, I become better in every aspect of my life. I'm a better partner. I'm a better father, a better human, better coworker. Like, every single area of my life, as I learn more about myself and how my brain works, and why I feel certain ways and why things happen to me, I become freer. Right. I
Mm.
read in this book one time that part of our problem is that we think our minds and us are the same thing. As soon as we can understand that they're separate, we can move through in peace. Um,
Wow.
and for me, I think that's a huge thing for me. I don't listen to my mind without examining it, right?
Mm.
Because I like to think of my mind as like this alarm system, and it works unbelievably well, almost too well. And it alerts you to every single thing that happens. It alerts you in some way. And if it's against an identity that you hold, it's going to alert you. If it's against a stereotype that you hold or a bias that and so you're alerted to things all day. And if we're not careful, our unconscious mind just has us act on those things.
Mm.
We're just doing stuff we don't even understand. And I just try not to live that. Like I try not to live from my unconscious. When I have a thought, I examine it. Where's it coming from, and how do I want to move forward? Not I have a thought, now I have an action.
Mm.
And for me, I want kids. That's how I want kids to like. That's such an important skill for kids to
Yeah.
understand. Is that how do you think about what's wrong before you react?
Yeah.
Um, and if we can get that as a thing that happens for young people, like I think that brain process, and it's hard because their brains are developing and stuff, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
It takes intention from us as adults too.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things that we preach to adults is social emotional learning is a huge thing in schools, and no adult knows how to do social emotional learning.
Yep.
Like adults don't get social emotional learning. We didn't get taught as a kid. We don't usually take classes for it. There's not a lot of things that we know about it, and so then we're tasked with teaching the next generation how to do it, and what they're just doing is getting our bad information.
Yeah.
Um,
And I also like to say, when I was in my manager role, how are we going to expect adults to do what they don't experience themselves?
you know,
So it has to fall on, to me, it was always leaders. That's your opportunity to lead, is
right?
to build an environment that feels social, where adults feel and resonate to social emotional. And then they can say, oh, this is what it feels like. Now I have something to help me with kids. Like, to
Yep.
your point, like, it's easier to work with children a lot of time. You know that more than it is with adults,
Yes, it
because
is.
we don't come with the
Mm-hmm.
necessary skills to cope all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
I love that you said that. One of the things, and we work with both. So we work with the youth and we work with the adults who work with youth.
mm,
The youth are always they're always easier to work with. They're more open.
yep,
They're more willing to grow and learn. They're more eager. When you work with like adults are great, but when you work with adults, they're baked. They're like cooked. They know life. They got it.
yeah,
They're less willing to learn and grow and have new ideas be taken seriously. And
yeah,
so it's a lot more of like eye rolls and it's a lot harder to get that group
hmm
than it is kids. So I totally agree with you. Kids are just more perceptive. So I mean open to it.
And I think also, which I always try to keep that childlike, a piece of that childlikeness, right? Yeah, we
Mm-hmm.
adults, we have adult things going on. Um, Although I often think, like, if we were back, caveman and all of that, we wouldn't have bills. This wouldn't be an issue. Like, so
Exactly.
the things that we think about and, like, to your point, overthink, are the things that really don't matter anyway. If we
Mm-hmm.
were back in the day and we never
Mm-hmm.
had the bills, we never had a house in this, all the material things adds more stress.
Mm-hmm.
But the childlike piece is often, we let that go. And that's where our imagination and our creativity,
That's right.
to your point, like, our thoughts start to, they just bang, 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 keep coming.
Mm-hmm.
And then we work ourselves up to the point where we can't receive something, where this kid is like, okay, let's try it. And
Mm-hmm.
so many times, like in working with adults, all of us, it gets to a point where it's just the fear of failing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, how do you work with adults who you can help work through that? Because that's, to me, that's the big wall, that
Mm-hmm.
fear of failure. It's like, but you're not failing.
Right.
And I had to learn that for myself. Like, you're not failing. Like, life or death does not hang on this particular decision.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you worked with adults, especially to get them to move past some of those limiting mindsets in service of kids?
Yeah. Fear is an interesting thing. It is a driver. Um, I think for me, it's really important to have adults examine where those fears come. Where does it come from?
Mm,
Right? Because the fear just doesn't pop up out of nowhere. There's something that your mind's telling you is scary. Like, where does it come from? Um, is it actually important? I had a
yeah.
friend who had this analogy, and he would say, some people come to four-way stops, and there's a stop sign, and it's hard, so they turn around. But like at a four-way stop, you don't turn around. You take a look around, you examine, and you keep going forward, right? And
Mm,
so, that's what I try to say to, like, that concept is what I try to talk to adults about, young people. Like, it's going to be hard, but
yeah.
you don't turn around. That moment of like fear and hard, it's just telling you to look around, see what's going on, and make a decision in the hard. Right? It's
Mm,
not. It's hard now, and I'm scared, so I turn around. It's hard now, and I'm scared. I really need to start thinking. What's the fear about? How do I move through this?
yeah.
Um, because that's a huge part of it. We talk about in our stuff control, right? And how
Mm,
control is rooted in fear. When you seek to control something, it's because you're scared of the outcome. You're scared of what might happen, what could happen. And when we release that control, we release the fear, right?
mm,
And we can be more in collaboration because I'm
yeah.
not scared of what's going to happen. I'm prepared for what's going to happen, and I'm going to get through it.
Mm,
But it's like in those moments when our mind is telling us this is going to be hard, this is going to be bad, and then we listen to that instead of what's going to be hard. Why?
mm,
Okay, I can actually handle that, right? And I can move through it. But we oftentimes just it sends up those flashing red lights and we get scared and we turn around. And so like let's
right.
not do that. Let's step into that space because that's where you're gonna grow, the child's gonna grow, and things get better. But you've got to be willing.
Yeah. So then how are you on that side while you're working with adults through the fear? How is the empowerment for youth showing up? Like, how are you empowering the youth?
So I think we kind of talk to them about the same, just the reverse.
Mm,
Um, speaking up, right? Like if you've got a program where you're not hell bent on control, where we're not trying to control everything,
yeah.
then you have children who are allowed to speak their mind and have a say in
Mm,
what's going on. And in that environment, they feel safer, they feel more trusted, they trust you better, there's better relationships. It allows them a space where they can thrive instead of a space where they come in and they feel like they're here and I'm here.
yeah.
And that power struggle, like I don't care who you are, when there's a power dynamic, it means something, right?
Mm,
Like there's an identity that comes with that. If you're
yeah.
the person up here and I'm down here, there's an identity that comes with that.
Yeah.
Um, we talk about, people talk about white privilege and all. Like there's an adult privilege that comes with being an adult and a parent. We get all of this power over children,
Yeah.
and what is it like to give them some of that? And then when you give a child the power, you got to be willing to hear what they say,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then it can't be like, oh, you're disrespectful. It- you know what I mean? Like we've
Yeah.
got to be open to these things and see children as they are just small adults, and this is their time to learn. They're in training, and if we're not
Right.
training them, then they can't be successful adults.
True. True. And that is so true because working with teachers oftentimes, well, I'm the teacher and I'm like, and
Hmm.
but if the child's sitting here right now and I'm talking to the student, and they're saying, well, this, that, and they've got like some major points on what you are not
Hmm.
doing right. Maybe it's time for us to listen and not just dismiss because I'm the teacher or I'm the
That's right.
adult. Um, and that bothered me so much because it's like you're not even listening to this. You don't even know who you are because
Yep.
when you have to play the role where I'm the this,
Hmm.
I'm the parent, I'm the this, I'm the that. You really don't have control anyway
That's
because
fear.
they've already
And,
triggered you.
and that's it. And it's funny because we're like the identity of I'm dad. So what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right. Well, it can mean whatever you want it to mean.
Hmm.
But if you take the identity of whatever father figure you have seen,
Yeah.
you're gonna act that way. You get to choose. There's this woman said to me one time when we were having this conversation about like how we as a society we have been following the same thing for hundreds and hundreds of years, and some of them just never change. Like we haven't examined any of the things, we just do it. And
Yeah.
I was like, that's so wild that people have never thought like. And she said, yeah, one of the things that I always think is like we made all this shit up. Like we made all this up. Humans
Yeah.
in the past made all of this up, and we follow it, and we get to make our own shit up too.
Yeah.
Like you get to make your own stuff up. I don't have to follow what Joe Blow did 200 years ago because that's tradition. I don't actually care about tradition. I care
Right.
about what's right for me and what makes me feel happy. And if that
I'm
doesn't follow your traditions or identities, that's okay. You deal with that.
I'm having that same conversation with my daughter. Just even this past Thanksgiving. Okay, so where I'm from, I don't know anybody that schedules a time to eat Thanksgiving dinner.
Hmm.
In her mind, dinner is at 6. In my mind, I'm like, it's wherever we want it to be. It could be 9 o'clock. Like back home, as my mom cook things, and probably your family too, as they cook things, you're eating.
Hmm.
Then eventually somebody's gonna say grace, and then you eat for real. Like you eating throughout the day. So for her, I told her the exact same thing. I'm like, the tradition is not religion. It's whatever you want that to
That's
be.
right.
So if this year I want barbecue instead of turkey, that's what I'm going for. Like
Hmm.
it is what it's about, being present more than it is we're gonna follow this code.
100%.
of whatever. And so I learned that especially during COVID, which was like, what does all of this mean? We slaving away, cooking all day. Is it about the food, or is it just about having a good time with like people that you care about and you just want to spend time with? Like, we can build new traditions, we can build new actions. And the way that the world is now, what's kind of cool is that the youth are starting to question a lot of these. Well, why? I mean, they've been questioning it. We just don't have an answer, and we just can't say like, I just don't know. Like, let's figure it out. Like, let's figure it out together. So then you talked about, the identity of like father. Like, how has your journey like transferred into like you as a parent? Because for me, it's like, because my parents were very controlling, very, and I did not want to be that way with with my daughter. And so it was to the point where you could not be your own person growing up. And you didn't have a voice, really. Like, children were seen and not heard was kind of the upbringing. But that's what happened during their time. So I understand why. For me, it's like, no, I need to empower you. Like, you need to advocate for yourself. You're going to be a strong, intelligent Black woman. You define the success on your terms. We're not playing these games and these labels and all that. So I parent her differently, in a way that is giving her the opportunity of trial and error. Like you said, like, you be you, you do you. How has your journey shifted your perspective on parenting?
Yeah, so much. So I would say, like, when I first was a parent, I wasn't going through this journey, so I was a different person. I was much more strict. I was much more domineering. I was much more, you're going to do what I say because I'm the parent. You know what I mean? Much more that, like, do as I say, not as I do. But the further I've gotten in my journey, it has really opened me up to this parenting through collaboration. In the end, this is my daughter's life. In the end, this is her life. I get to support her in whatever she does. I get to help her in whatever she decides. When I decide for her, though, we have conflict. It never fails, right? So there's little. So I, growing up, I didn't have an opportunity. I will say this too. My mom, and I thank her all the time for this, and she didn't know it, but she did. My mom broke some generational curses herself, and she just didn't understand it. My mom had a very strict mom, and she had a very, very kind of just, I don't know how to describe it, but kind of like a tumultuous upbringing with her mom.
Yeah.
And she made the decision that she wasn't going to be like that towards us. And she was the most understanding. She was she was just there for us all the time. She wasn't super strict. She wasn't strict at all.
Yeah.
But she was there for us. Everything we went through, my mom was right there for us, right? And that was hard because we were like in gangs. And so we would come home and be like, Mom, we was in a shooting. Mom, we was doing, like, it was stuff that she would be absolutely terrified because her sons are telling her this thing, and she would just listen to us. She would talk to us. And we felt a connection to her in that way. And now I will say there were some things that she probably should have stepped in on. She didn't. She could have. And I value it so much because now with my daughter, like, it gives me that perspective.
Yeah.
Of being there for her and being someone she can talk to. And it really feels good. Like, my daughter talks to me about everything. She's 14 and she'll come home and be like, Dad, I need to talk to you. My boyfriend's doing it. And we'll have a whole conversation about her boyfriend and all the things that go with it. And she's like, what would you do? And it feels so good to me because I'm like, this is not, when it's not normal. People, like, when we go to workshops, the kids are always like, man, I hate my parents. My parents are the meanest people in the world. My parents are this. It's always their parents are their biggest problems in their lives. And I'm just like, man, it feels good not to be that to my daughter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Nice.
But one of the things is I really just want them to make decisions. I always tell my daughter, if it has to do with your body, that's on you. When it's your safety, I'll take care of it, right? If it's safety or what you need, your needs and your safety, I'll take care of it. If it's your body and you take care of it, right? So she's 14 and I started she dyes her hair a lot. That's not my hair. I can try to control it, but what is it actually going to stop? What is it going to stop? Nothing. She's just going to dye it because she wants to. She's going to do stuff behind my back. So dye your hair. She was at the end of 8th grade. She wanted to get a nose ring. Go get a nose ring. She got a nose ring. I'm not. What does it matter to me? And then it's all of these things that then people start to say, well, if she gets a nose ring, that means this. No, it doesn't. You're assuming it means that because you've got it in your mind. Maybe you did that when you were a kid. Maybe you saw somebody do that. So now you have that information to use. But it actually doesn't mean anything for my daughter.
Yeah.
And I always tell people that when people are like, well, you're not worried. I'm actually not worried because that was your experience. And I'm not going to put my trauma on her. I'm going to let her live it out. And we'll get there when we get there. So it really has helped me in that way. Like we are all in collaboration. I want them to have control over what they should have control over, and I'll control the things that keep them safe and take care of their needs. And it just is, it's really works. Like me and my kids have a great relationship, and they get autonomy over their body and their thoughts and the things they want to do. And it teaches them that, right?
Yeah.
As 3 women, like it teaches them, like I have the right to do whatever the hell I want to with myself. Like I don't have to listen to anybody else. It's helped me, and they go to school and they'll come home and they'll be like, Dad, there's this little boy he keeps hugging me and I don't want him to. And I'm like, well, tell him to stop. I'm always like, don't let that shit keep going, because if you keep letting it go, it's going to always be that way. You're never going to learn how to tell a man or a boy to stop touching you like you don't want to. Start now. Don't even let it become a thing for you. Right. And I feel so good being able to have these conversations with them and them actually listen to me and not think I'm like, because I do let them do a lot.
Yeah.
So much so that like when I let my daughter get her nose pierced, all of my family is like, what the hell are you doing? Why would you let her do that? And I'm like, why would I not? Tell me what the problem is. Well, she's too young. Why is she too young? I always say this thing, like in other cultures, people get tattoos and piercings and stuff when they're kids, 5, 6, 7 years old. But because our culture deems it, oh, you're fast, or whatever they deemed it, then we just go down that road. But I'm not going to let you put that label on my daughter. She gets to do and be who she wants outside of your labels and identities for her.
Yeah.
And I just want them always to know that.
And that is beautiful, because I was going to say, especially all women, yes, what we've seen in the media as of late, like the controlling of Black women's bodies, and Black women trying to figure out, like, this is my own body, and maybe not doing things that service them in the best way. But I think it stems from the fact that it has always historically been at the discretion of someone else. It's been at their control. And so I try to encourage my daughter to, like, girl, if you want to get your hair, my mom was like, we couldn't get our hair cut until we were 18. Then you're grown and you do what you want to do. And to your point, my older sister always experimented, because it's a form of creativity. It's got nothing to do with, and I know at that time, and this is where I had to understand my parents' parenting, because that's what they got. Right. So it came from a place of fear because of the trauma that was attached, if we keep going down the ancestral line. And so a lot of the things that we were told was a way to try to protect us, not knowing necessarily why, to your point again, with like, it was just things we did. And so we just associate a nose piercing and hair color with being fast, rather than looking at it as, go back to our real lineage and history and see that we had people doing this who are dynamic leaders and kings and queens who were expressing themselves in this way. It's just hair. It'll grow back. And the perception that you have about me is just that. It is your perception. So it's something that I am giving back to you about yourself, as opposed to the hypersexualization of Black girls is just, when you want to talk about pedophilia, you need to we need to think about that as a collective, because it's nice to hear how you are empowering your girls, but also protecting them at the same time, and that you can do both.
What you were just saying makes me, so a couple of things, like we pass our trauma on, right? We unintentionally just pass our trauma on as identity sometimes, like,
Yeah.
and then we don't understand where it comes from in the end, right? But it came
Yeah.
from us. We passed it down. And another thing you made me think about is this idea. So, man, I was working with like maybe 5 years ago, and I was at this event, and this lady Kate, she told us to show up in business attire. She was like, "It's really important you show up in business attire." So I put on what I deemed to be business attire, and I got to this meeting, and she
Mm-hmm.
tells everybody, she's like, "Nobody here is in business attire." And I'm sitting there kind of upset, and I'm like, kind of stewing. I'm like, man, I don't like this. And she was like, "Eric, you look like you got something to say." I said, "I do." I said, well, for me, who made business? Who said business is this? She was like, well, I don't know. I said, for me, it's built in white supremacy. Professional was a thing that white people made.
I was
Right?
about to say
And
that. Come
so
on.
and
Yes.
so I am not going to be defined by this is professional for me. And I said, we're in a time where like we need to make space for everybody's idea of what professional is, because
Yeah.
now yours is not the only one that matters.
You're right.
And she was total, and to her credit, she was like, I've never heard it said like that. And we're going to stop this right now. Don't even worry about the business stuff. We're going to go back and examine how this looks. And ever since then, she's never said anything else to me about it. I dress
Mm-hmm.
however I want. So so the other day, my daughter, she's in DECA, and she was getting ready to go to a DECA competition. She was like, Dad, I need a business suit. And she showed me what it was. And it was this whole, like, I was like, nope. I was like, look, I'm going to talk to your teacher. I was like, I understand we're going to do this today. But from now on, I'm going to have a conversation with him, because I don't want you living in this world where this is where you have to be. And
Yeah.
I was like, I had just got home from work. I was like, look what I got on.
Yeah.
This is business, because I say it's business. I'm not going to
Yeah.
be. You're not going to put me in your box, right?
Thank you.
But that just kind of reminds me of what you just were talking about.
No, I'm about to shout because I've been preaching that since I've been the word professional bothers me. Like it gets me
Mm-hmm.
angry now, because professional, you are right. It dictates a way of appearing, a way of speaking, a way
Yep.
of being
Yep.
that is not inclusive of everyone. We have established a dress code, and it's professional dress. But is the man who comes in Crocs and Hawaiian t-shirt with a ponytail less professional than the person wearing a three-piece suit?
Right.
If they both do their jobs well,
That's right.
if they're both getting the impact and result, or is it just about what feels comfortable to me? I think we just need to go back and say it this way. We need to go back and redefine professionalism.
Yep.
Is it doing your job and your craft well? Or is it looking and playing the part? Is it
Mm.
your character and integrity and your intellect? Or is it being able, to speak? And I understand there's also a game that we have to play for certain people. Like even with this podcast, I've been going back and forth of like, do I need to dress professional because I see other people dressing professionally? I like to be casual. I want people to feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to, have to be dressing up the entire time. Like it's just supposed to be a dialogue. What is
Yep.
professional for me? Okay, it's going to be these things. That's it.
Yep.
And I'm glad because everyone comes in and they're just themselves.
Yeah.
Professionalism is just a way for you to mask who you truly are.
That's right.
And I especially learned that because my team was like, we're not doing that. And we were still professional. We were
Mm-hmm.
still providing service. We
Yep.
came in our identities and we were still doing top-notch work.
Right.
And then you had people in other locations wearing the suits, doing the stuff.
Trash.
They were doing their jobs well as well. I like, what's the,
I like to say, I always tell people, like, I got tattoos. I got my nose pierced. I do all of these things. I have to wear jeans and tennis shoes a lot to do things I do.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, like, I went to college. I've worked hard. I did everything I need to do to be at this point, just like all the rest of these folks. I'm going to
Right.
be who I want to be. I don't have to prove anything else. I don't need to fit in with y'all. I don't need to do things to put myself behind so that I can fit in with I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
I've done everything I need to do to get the credentials I need to be where I'm at. And I'm going to be comfortable here. I'm not about to let you dictate how I show up as well. Like,
Yeah.
You either gonna take or leave it because my work is good. And that's what matters. Like just
Oh
like you
my,
just said.
you got me wanting to shout over here. Yes, preach, preach. You either take it or leave it. If it's not your cup of
Mm-hmm.
tea, you got coffee.
Mm-hmm.
You got a whole bunch of other stuff. You go figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
doesn't stop you. And that's a limiting belief that I'm trying to let go of. Like, I can still be professional. I can still speak the way that I need to speak, communicate the way I need to communicate that
Mm-hmm.
is acceptable. Because like I would tell people, like in my former role, like, you do know that comprehension is a huge part of communication. So it's not just what someone's saying, it's how you are hearing it. So you got to
Yep.
do both. You can't always blame it on people who you say aren't communicating. If you're not listening, they go
Right.
hand in hand. So then my next question for you is like, how are you defining success for yourself?
That's such a tough question for me. I define success as doesn't have a lot to do with money. My success is rooted in my joy. It's
Mm,
rooted in the impact I make on people. Um, Now I tell you, I just feel, one of the things that I struggle with is I feel like a success right now, like because I'm a great dad.
yeah.
I feel like I'm a great partner. I I do great work. Um, I care about people and things. I That's what's success for me. I do things that bring me joy all the time. Like I tell people all the time, like I just don't want to do things that don't bring me joy. I don't care what it entails. I don't care who's gonna be there. If it doesn't bring me joy, I'm just gonna choose out.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I don't care what people think about me not being there. I don't think it just doesn't matter to me. You know.
Yeah.
Um, I think that that's success for me. It's just truly living authentically and finding joy in the world. Like
Yeah.
that's what I find define as success.
Nice. I think that's our God-given right to just be you. Like that's it. Like we don't have to answer to any man about anything else.
Yep.
I'm just me. And that's it. And that's what we all should be moving towards.
Yep.
Um, so as we close out, what what can we anticipate in the next evolution or the next version of Eric Golden?
Hopefully a lot. I'm always working on things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
um, I got some children's books I'm trying to write right now that kind of push these social emotional things and put them in front of kids. I really want them to come out with materials and resources for teachers as well. So that the
Mm,
children's book comes out, and then there's some materials and resources that goes along with it to help them really dialogue these things and bring them to life for the kids, so that there's a
yeah.
thing for them, and it helps the teachers as well. Um, I got a couple of I don't know communication things that I want to put out,
Yeah.
and just helping couples communicate better, helping friends and just helping people communicate and really be open and honest with each other. And then something I do for fun is I made a game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a game called Victory is Mine. It's a card game, like a family game, and that's super fun. So really just trying to get those things out. These are just some of the things that I'm, trying to get these out. And then Young Professionals Network, really just continuing to mentor children and tutor and do whatever we can to have an impact.
Mm. Do you work directly with schools or like just parents and
Yep.
communities within that?
Both. Both. So we'll work with anybody. We can work with schools and come in and do some work. We can work with the Boys and Girls Environment, the after school programs of the world,
Mm,
and we do direct to student tutoring.
nice.
My business partner, he's a teacher, um, and so we do like elementary through middle school tutoring. He does a lot of like holistic tutoring for elementary school students. I do math for middle school students.
Hmm.
Well, anywhere under middle school, I do math. Um, yeah, so we kind of do a lot, direct to
Nice.
whoever needs it.
Nice. Um, from your journey, if there's one thing that you want listeners to hear about your experience, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it just to go along with the identity piece, define your identities.
Mm,
Don't let them define you, right?
mhm,
And so for me, that means, yeah, I'm a man, and I don't have to be what people say men are, right?
mhm.
The hard, cold, uncaring person that we are told has to be a man. Like, I don't know nothing about cars. I don't care about cars at all, right? And when I tell other men, they're like, I don't care about. I just care less about cars. I don't know how to change a damn thing on that car. Shoes. I don't care about shoes. Like, shoes mean nothing to me.
Right.
I don't need this thing to tell the value to the world that I need that.
That
Wait,
you are a
I
man.
wear whatever hell I want to, and your opinion of what I wear, it doesn't matter to me.
Right.
But it frees me. It frees me from this idea that some of the things I'm not doing are not man based. I don't
Yeah.
care. I do what I feel is a man, and I have found that when I've done that, my definition of a man is really powerful for me.
Mm.
Right? It helps me so much. And anytime I feel like I don't know where I'm going, I can just lean in on the identities that I've chosen. Being
Yeah.
black, what does it mean? It means something different to me than it probably means to others. I take strength in it, right?
Yeah.
And so all of these things, like, choose your identity and define it for yourself. Don't
Yeah.
let society define the identity and then you live into it.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you this question. I got a couple, and then I probably go in, I lie, because as you keep talking, I'll probably gonna have another question. So you're in the present, right? Think you can go as far back as you want to. Up to you. You can do a specific age or number of years. What would Eric today tell Eric back then?
Oh man, I think I would have said after fifth grade. There was a moment after fifth grade. I was living with my grandparents from kindergarten through fifth grade, some of the most formative years of my life. My grandma was a teacher. My grandpa was in the military. They were tremendous people. All of my other brothers lived with other people. So I was the only person lived. I was the only child. It was the only time I lived. And it was like complete focus on me. My grandma would help me with it was like such a beautiful time for me. And then I got to fifth grade and I started growing up. And I don't know. I always there's this story in The Ways of White Folks.
Mm,
Um, I think it's called Poor Black Boy or something like that.
yeah.
Poor little black boy. And I felt like that a little bit. Like once I got to fifth grade, I wasn't the cute little black boy anymore. Um, I was kind of a problem. And
Yeah.
so I had to move in with my dad. I hadn't really even been around my dad to that point. Like he had moved away when I was 2 and
Wow.
went to the military. I wasn't around him. He had just moved back. And they were like, "You're going to live with your dad." It like shattered me. I felt so much like nobody cared about me. Like I didn't belong anywhere. So if I could go back, I would tell my younger self that this has nothing to do with you.
Mm,
Like this has nothing to do with people, the care and the love that you deserve.
yeah.
Has everything to do with the adults and what they've got going on right now.
Mm,
And I just didn't understand that back then, so I internalized that a lot. Of nobody wants me. Like my
yeah.
mom didn't want me, my grandma didn't want me, my other grandma didn't want me. Um, and so then within 3 years, I'm in gangs, right? Because
Yeah.
of this idea that nobody
Mm,
wants me. So if I could go back, I would say like you are valuable, and people and don't worry about like it's going to be okay.
yeah.
This doesn't actually define how valuable you are to people. This is just the thing they have going on right now.
Yeah. Nice. So okay, we're gonna flip it. Eric, however many years ahead in the future, whatever success is still looking like for you. If future Eric could talk to Eric sitting here right now, what would future Eric say?
You know what? This is an easy one because I was at therapy the other day and me and my therapist had a great session,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about this idea that I've one of the generational curses I think in my family is that we will be content. We will get to a place and just be like, this is good enough, and not try to
Mm,
do anything else. And I thought that I had worked against that good enough because I've gotten to a point where I felt like, okay, I'm a little bit further along than my parents. I've gotten here. But what I didn't understand is I got to that point and then I became comfortable. And I'm just like, I'm just gonna stay here.
mm,
And so if my future self, I would say keep working. Like don't get comfortable. And it's not about wanting more money, but just wanting more for you. Like just want
mm.
to experience more and do more. Don't You're not done. Just because you've made it to this place doesn't mean you can rest. Like, take a rest, but keep moving. I think that's what I would say to myself.
Nice. 2 more questions. What can we do to support you in your work as a community? Like, so whoever's the community of listeners, what can we do to support you in your work? Whatever that is.
That's an interesting one. I'm very much like this. Do support yourself. I really just, find you, do the work, the mental, the emotional work to find out who you are so that we are walking in a world where there's more people um, who value each other.
Yeah.
Just that's it. Just that there's more people, because if more people value each other, that helps me.
Yep.
That helps everybody, right? So that's what I think. Like, I don't need any, find you and lean into that and just, and let's value each other in a way that we don't right now.
Yeah. And so where can we find you? How can we be in touch?
Yeah, you can email me at eric@standupteam.org. You can find me on Facebook, just Eric Golden. Um, we have a Facebook page and a Instagram page, Young Professional Network LLC, on Instagram and on Facebook. Yeah, I think those are the best ways.
Okay. So that has been the end of the Unlearning podcast. We want to thank Eric Golden for coming on. I hope you could come back again. We hope this, everyone resonated from Eric's story. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you, Eric, and everyone. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
This has been the Unlearning Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this little introduction to the show, and I look forward to unlearning with you together in future episodes. If you enjoy the show, which I know you will, please like, share, and subscribe. You can also send me a written or video comment on any of your favorite podcasting apps. This podcast will be available on all podcast platforms. To stay connected, follow me on Christina Jones, the Unlearning Podcast on Facebook, and Unlearn This 2022 on Instagram. Again, thank you for listening, and until next time, what is it that you need to unlearn in your life today to live a better, brighter tomorrow?